I have some advice for you.
More advice? Even on my wedding day, you must be the wizened firstborn brother.
In fact, the wisest thing I can impart is never listen to me again. Father would be so proud of you.
Whose wedding do you think we will be attending next? Oh, I do love a wedding. As an attendee.
I guess you're right.
Okay, gentle reader, stop what you are doing right now, because Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 is not just a love story. It is a puzzle, a carefully constructed, obsessively detailed, layered puzzle where every single frame is doing something. The costume team is hiding meaning in fabric. The set designers are burying symbolism in wallpaper. The writers are planting seeds 3 episodes before you even know you need them. And the wildest part? Most of it is moving so fast, so quietly, so confidently in the background that you watched the whole season, felt everything, cried probably, and still missed half of what the show was actually saying to you. That is not an accident. That is Bridgerton trusting that its most dedicated viewers will come back, rewatch, pause, zoom in, and lose their minds over a detail the size of a button. And today, that is exactly what we are doing. We are going frame by frame, costume by costume, scene by scene, and pulling out every hidden detail, every deliberate callback, every blink and you miss it moment that most people completely glossed over. Because this season was not just telling you a story, it was whispering a dozen smaller ones underneath it. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Let us start with something that feels small but is actually one of the most deliberate, creative decisions of the entire season. Benedict's wardrobe. Now, on the surface, Benedict dresses like an artist, loose, a little romantic, slightly outside the rigid structure of what every other man in the ton is wearing. But Season 4 Part 2 takes that further, in a way that is easy to miss if you are not paying close attention. His color palette shifts. In the earlier episodes, Benedict moves through cooler tones, blues, grays, muted greens, colors that keep him slightly detached, slightly unresolved, like a painting that has not quite found its subject yet. But as the season progresses and Sophie becomes more real to him, more permanent, those colors warm up, quietly, gradually, almost imperceptibly. By the time we reach the final episodes, he is moving through warmer, richer tones, and it does not happen all at once because real emotional change never does. The costume department is literally color-coding his emotional journey and trusting you to feel it without explaining it. That is the kind of storytelling that separates Bridgerton from every other period drama on television right now. And speaking of Benedict, let us talk about the bracelet, because this is one that flew completely under the radar for most viewers. Men in this world do not wear jewelry. That is not how this society operates. Rigid gender presentation, controlled appearances, everything in its place. So the fact that Benedict is quietly, consistently wearing a bracelet throughout Season 4 is not a styling accident. It is a statement. It is the show visually marking him as someone who does not fully belong to the world he was born into. He is an artist in an aristocrat's body. He feels the rules but does not fully submit to them. And that bracelet, tiny as it is, says all of that without a single line of dialogue. It is subtle enough that most people would not even register it consciously, but it lands in your subconscious and shapes how you feel about him without you even knowing why. That is masterful costume work. Now let us move to Sophie, because her visual storytelling this season is just as rich, just as layered, and somehow even more emotional. The amethyst necklace is the detail that anchors her entire arc, and most people treated it as background jewelry. But watch how the show handles it. There are specific moments where the camera lingers just long enough on that necklace to tell you it matters. And then there are moments where it is almost hidden, tucked away, concealed under a collar or a shawl, mirroring exactly how Sophie is concealing her identity throughout the season. The necklace is not just an accessory. It is a visual metaphor for who she actually is underneath the role she has been forced to play. When it is visible, Sophie is closer to her truth. When it is hidden, she is performing survival. And the stone choice is not random either. Amethyst carries a specific cultural and historical connection that ties directly into Sophie's heritage and her unresolved identity. The show is threading that meaning through a piece of jewelry small enough to miss entirely, and trusting that the viewers who catch it will feel the weight of it. But perhaps the most emotionally loaded piece of visual storytelling in the entire season belongs to a shawl. Specifically, the shawl Sophie wears during the My Cottage scenes, and most pointedly during the kite sequence that has become one of the most talked about moments of the season. That shawl is not new. It was worn by Daphne in season 1, and if you have been watching this show long enough to remember Daphne's wardrobe, that recognition hits like a quiet thunderclap. Sophie is literally wrapped in Bridgerton history before she is officially part of the Bridgerton family. She belongs to this world before the world knows it, before Benedict knows how to say it, before society has given her permission. The shawl says it first. It is foreshadowing stitched into fabric, and it works so beautifully precisely because it never calls attention to itself. You either know it or you do not. And if you know it, the kite scene hits completely differently. Speaking of My Cottage, this location deserves its own analysis because the show is using it as more than just a pretty setting. Every single time the story moves to My Cottage, something shifts in the atmosphere. The lighting softens, the pacing slows. The noise of the ton, the gossip, the rules, the surveillance, all of it drops away. Benedict and Sophie stop being a scandal or a problem or a complication. They become two people who are allowed to just exist together without consequence. The show is using physical space to communicate emotional freedom, and it does it so consistently that by the time the finale arrives and the wedding takes place at My Cottage, the location itself carries the entire emotional history of their relationship. It is not just where they got married, it is the only place where they were ever truly free. And Bridgerton knew that from the moment they introduced it. Now let us talk about the moment that sent the internet into complete chaos and somehow still did not get the attention it deserved. Lady Araminta and the shoe clips. If you watched that scene and felt a strange familiar pull, like your brain was reaching for something it could not quite grab, that is because you have heard that energy before. Araminta delivers her complaint about having 36 shoe clips when she previously had 37, with such icy, offended precision that it mirrors almost beat for beat the iconic Dudley Dursley tantrum from Harry Potter. 36. But last year I had 37. Same rhythm, same dramatic outrage over a number that has dropped by exactly 1. Same energy of someone who feels the universe has personally wronged them over something the rest of the world would consider completely trivial. And here is where the Easter egg goes from clever to genuinely brilliant. Katie Lung, the actress playing Araminta, is Cho Chang. She came from the Harry Potter universe, and Bridgerton gave her a callback to that franchise so perfectly constructed, so deadpan, so committed that you could watch it 3 times and still debate whether it was intentional. It was. Every single beat of it was intentional, and the fact that Araminta delivers it with absolute zero self-awareness, completely serious, utterly convinced of her own grievance, makes it land even harder. It is unserious and iconic in the same breath, and that balance is incredibly difficult to pull off. But Araminta is not just a walking Easter egg. Her entire visual presence this season is a masterclass in using costume as character architecture. The show commits to black as her signature color from her very first scene, and it never wavers. But what makes it extraordinary is that it is never flat black. It is textured black, layered black, structured black with sharp silhouettes, and controlled tailoring that communicates something specific about who this woman is and how she moves through the world. She is not dressing to be admired. She is not dressing to attract. She is dressing to dominate, to signal that she has already decided the outcome of every room she walks into before she arrives. The costume team described it as armor, and that description is exactly right, because that is precisely how it functions. She moves through scenes sealed off, untouchable, emotionally controlled, and her wardrobe reinforces every single one of those qualities without a single word of exposition. And visually, her dark structured silhouettes against the soft pastels of the ton create an immediate contrast that tells you everything about where she stands relative to everyone else. She is not of this world. She has simply decided to rule it. Now let us get into Queen Charlotte, because she is operating on a completely different level of Easter egg sophistication this season. At the masquerade, her wig is not just spectacular, it is a message. The structure contains cage-like elements, threaded with silver details that represent stars and the cosmos. And if you know the history between Queen Charlotte and King George, specifically his profound love of astronomy and the way that shared universe of stars and planets became one of the intimate languages of their relationship, then that wig is not fashion. It is devotion. It is Charlotte carrying George into a room he can no longer enter, wearing his love on her head, literally in a way that the Ton sees as spectacle, but that carries the weight of an entire private love story underneath it. And it does not stop there. Her Pomeranians are named Mercury and Phoebe, continuing the celestial theme, making her personal world a living extension of what she and George built together. Bridgerton is reminding you, quietly, consistently, without ever making a speech about it, that beneath all the power and performance and magnificent wigs, Charlotte is still a woman carrying a love story. Every detail on her body tells you that. And the masquerade itself deserves a much deeper look than most people gave it, because the production design of that sequence is doing extraordinary work. The whole atmosphere is built to feel slightly unreal, celestial motifs everywhere. Lighting that feels like it exists outside normal time. A dreamlike quality that makes everything feel slightly elevated above the ordinary world of the Ton. And that is completely intentional because this is the night Sophie's entire fate pivots. This is her Cinderella collision moment, the night the story she was living in cracked open and let something else in. So the show surrounds it with fairy tale architecture. It makes the space feel like a storybook page because that is exactly what it is functioning as within the narrative. Even Benedict's styling at the masquerade carries that romantic artist edge, something slightly untamed, slightly searching, like a man who is about to walk into something larger than himself, without knowing it yet. The production design is foreshadowing the entire season in a single opening sequence, and most people were too busy being dazzled to notice. Let us close with the detail that is perhaps the most quietly devastating of the entire season. The portrait. That final shot in the post-credits sequence where Benedict's completed full-length portrait of Sophie hangs finished, signed, and real is not just a romantic image. It is the show's thesis statement about who Benedict actually is and what this love actually did to him. Because Benedict has always been someone who starts things. He is passionate, he is talented, he is drawn to beauty and feeling and expression. But he abandons things too. He loses momentum. He steps back from commitment when it starts to feel permanent. That is his pattern, and the show has been honest about it across multiple seasons. So him finishing the painting is the most significant character development moment of the entire season, and it is delivered without dialogue, without a speech, without anyone explaining what it means. It is just there. Complete. Signed, Sophie without her mask, fully seen, fully chosen, fully real. He followed through. He saw something to its end. And that something is her. That portrait is not just art. It is proof. And Bridgerton trusted you to understand that without telling you. That is the show at its absolute best, hiding the most important things in plain sight, and waiting for the people paying attention to find them. Let us talk about Eloise because the show is doing something with her this season that most people are registering emotionally without fully understanding why. Her masquerade look is deliberately armor-like, strong, structured, almost warrior energy in a room full of soft silhouettes and delicate fabrics. And that contrast is not accidental. Eloise has always been the one pushing against the boundaries of her world, rejecting the rules, questioning the performance of femininity that the Ton demands. But Season 4 shows her doing something more nuanced than outright rejection. She is evolving, questioning without dismissing, softening in certain places without surrendering the core of who she is, and her costuming reflects that shift in real time. She is not dressed like someone trying to disappear into society. She is dressed like someone preparing to step into a new version of themselves on their own terms. That is why so many fans are convinced Season 5 belongs to her. The show is not just hinting at it, it is visually announcing it. And then there is the downstairs world, because Season 4 expands it in a way no previous season attempted, And the reason matters. We see the kitchens, the laundry, the actual mechanical reality of how these grand households function. The uniforms vary subtly between houses. The labor is visible in a way it previously was not. And all of that exists specifically to ground Sophie's story in something tangible and real. Because without that grounding, her journey from servant to Bridgerton feels like fantasy. With it, the class divide becomes something you can feel in your bones, which means her crossing it means something genuinely earned, rather than simply romantic. The show is using world building as emotional architecture, and it works because by the time Sophie steps fully into the Bridgerton world, you understand exactly how much distance she has traveled to get there. And finally, the post-credits wedding placement itself is an Easter egg. Putting that moment after the credits is a deliberate, creative choice that turns the wedding into a secret, a reward for the